Police are making another push to find a missing teenager who vanished without a trace 8 days ago. Good evening, I'm Kelly Swoop. At this hour, police are still passing out thousands of flyers and canvassing the area where 16-year-old Phylicia Barnes was last seen.
I appreciate everything everybody is doing. But every moment, it feels like I'm going through labor pains over and over and over again. I don't need this circle. I need my baby found.
She disappeared December 28th, and many intensive searches turned up nothing. But now the body of 16-year-old Phylicia Barnes has been found. We have been following this breaking news all afternoon. Barnes' body was one of two pulled from the Susquehanna River yesterday. The other body is that of a man, and tonight police believe the two may be linked.
Phylicia Simone Barnes was born on April 4th, 1994 in Monroe, North Carolina. She was the only child of Janice Salas, who raised Phylicia on her own in a tight-knit household after separating from Phylicia's father, Russell Barnes. Those who knew Phylicia described her as a remarkably bright, charismatic, and mature teenager. She stood out for her intelligence and discipline, showcasing a level of dedication beyond her 16 years. Academically, Phylicia was thriving. She attended Union Academy, a public charter school near Monroe, where she challenged herself with honors courses. Phylicia held down an impressive 3.9 GPA and stayed busy with various extracurricular activities. Phylicia was a standout member of her school's dance team, using dance as an athletic and creative outlet. She also ran track and played soccer, pursuits which kept her physically active and competitive. Beyond just athletics, Phylicia developed a passion for psychology. She found herself fascinated by human behavior and motivations. Phylicia dreamed that one day she could earn a psychology degree, then utilize that knowledge to become a counselor and help others work through challenges. With her obvious intellectual gifts and drive to uplift people, Phylicia was on track for an early high school graduation at just 16 years old. Those who knew this disciplined, promising young woman expected she was destined for big things. Tragically, though, Phylicia Barnes would never get the chance to realize her full potential. At 16 years old, her life was cut short under horrific circumstances in a case that still haunts investigators to this day. Growing up, Phylicia had no relationship with her biological father, Russell Barnes. But Russell did have an older daughter living in Baltimore, Maryland, 28-year-old Deena Barnes, who was Phylicia's half-sister. Deena and Phylicia never met while growing up, but in 2010, they first made contact through Facebook and quickly formed a close bond, despite being separated by over a decade in age. That newfound sisterly bond tragically brought Phylicia to Baltimore, where the promising 16-year-old would go missing and lose her life in December of 2010. Deena Barnes was 12 years older than Phylicia, but the half-sisters soon discovered they had a natural chemistry. After connecting on Facebook, they began talking on the phone regularly and texting every day. Deena found Phylicia incredibly mature and driven for just 16 years old. She was impressed by how Phylicia challenged herself with honors courses while also playing sports and taking leadership roles in clubs at her North Carolina school. For Phylicia, it was exciting to bond with a big sister figure after growing up as an only child. The sisters made plans for Phylicia to visit Deena in Baltimore during her winter break in December 2010. It would be the first chance for the half-siblings to meet in person after months of building a relationship online. Deena offered Phylicia her spare room in the apartment she shared with her boyfriend of several years, Michael Johnson. Deena and Michael lived in a modest apartment located near Reisterstown Road Plaza in northwest Baltimore. Michael worked as a warehouse supervisor and generally kept to himself. By 2010, he was essentially a member of Deena's family after nearly a decade of dating her. In fact, Michael and Deena's long-term relationship had hit a recent rough patch, but they were trying to work through their issues. When Deena first told Michael about reconnecting with her teenage half-sister, Phylicia, he showed no hesitation or concern. Michael said he looked forward to meeting Sis and playfully referred to the teen as his own little sis as well. Nothing seemed amiss as the plans came together for Phylicia's big trip to Baltimore. Her family saw it as a chance for Phylicia to bond with her long-lost half-sister, see a new part of the country, and experience big city life. They had no reason to fear for Phylicia's safety. On December 17, 2010, 16-year-old Phylicia Barnes arrived by train in Baltimore. Her experience instantly exceeded her small-town life back home. Over the next 10 days, Deena took Phylicia shopping at malls, introduced her to new restaurants, and brought her to museums and parties around the city. By all accounts, Phylicia embraced the new social opportunities and freedom. She checked in regularly via text with family back home and posted photos of her exciting new adventures. Phylicia assured her mother Janice that she was having the time of her life exploring Baltimore. Still, some aspects of Phylicia's visit concerned her family in hindsight, as the 16-year-old's older sister, Deena, permitted Phylicia to drink alcohol and participate in parties with her social circle. Phylicia was allegedly encouraged by Deena to play drinking games, including some that involved risky behavior like nudity. It was a side of teenage life Phylicia had never experienced under her mother's watchful eye back in North Carolina. Another escalating concern was the inappropriate intimacy developing between Phylicia and Michael Johnson. As her trip continued, Phylicia and Michael increasingly flirted through calls, texts, social media posts, and comments. Hundreds of texts were exchanged, including late into the night. The volume of communication between the 28-year-old man and 16-year-old girl raised red flags, even if the messages themselves contained no explicit content. Phylicia's mother, Janice, grew especially troubled by the interactions between her underage daughter and a man 12 years her senior. But the trip was nearing its end, and Phylicia would return home in just a few days. No one close to Phylicia sensed any looming danger. Until December 28, 2010. On that fateful final day of her Baltimore visit, 16-year-old Phylicia Simone Barnes vanished without a trace. The morning of the 28th began normally. Phylicia was alone in Deena's apartment as her sister had left for work. Phylicia texted Deena around 12:30 p.m., saying she planned to get something to eat, then walked to a nearby shopping plaza. This was the last known communication from the teen. When Deena finished work and returned home that evening, Phylicia was gone. At first, Deena thought nothing of it, assuming Phylicia had connected with friends locally. But as hours passed without any word, panic set in. Phylicia wasn't responding to concerned texts or calls from Deena or her family back in North Carolina. Eventually, Deena contacted the Baltimore Police Department to report her teenage half-sister missing. Detectives immediately dove into investigating Phylicia's disappearance. They quickly collected security camera footage from around the apartment, traced her cell phone and social media activity, and interviewed Deena, her friends, and Michael, the last known people to have seen Phylicia.
Police are making another push to find a missing teenager who vanished without a trace 8 days ago. Good evening, I'm Kelly Swoop. At this hour, police are still passing out thousands of flyers and canvassing the area where 16-year-old Phylicia Barnes was last seen. Roosevelt Leftwich joins us now with the latest on the investigation. Rosie?
Well, Kelly, it has been 8 days since 16-year-old Phylicia Barnes left her sister's apartment to try to get something to eat at a nearby shopping center. And city police and the girl's family are fearing the worst. Today, about 25 city police cadets and more than a dozen city police detectives canvassed the apartment complex and nearby Reisterstown Road Plaza with flyers looking for any leads in this case. Police admit that they are stumped as there are few clues here. They have executed several search warrants and have interviewed dozens of people and have even what they call persons of interest, but so far no solid leads in this case. Police say the one thing they are sure about is that this girl would not go off on her own.
We look at the individual's background. We look for any sort of substance problems, substance abuse, any sort of emotional problems. None of that is present here. We have nothing to suggest that Phylicia Barnes is off of her own free will in some other part of the country.
Now, at this point, authorities are looking for any tips in this case. They've set up a special hotline, tip line on your screen. It's 1-855-223-0033. Again, that's 1-855-223-0033. It's going to be manned 24 hours a day for any information about the Barnes case. We'll have a lot more on this story coming up at 6.
I appreciate everything everybody is doing. But every moment, it feels like I'm going through labor pains over and over and over again. I don't need this circle. I need my baby found.
Missing teen Phylicia Barnes' 17th birthday was almost 2 weeks ago, but her family has decided not to celebrate her birthday until she is found. The North Carolina teenager was visiting her sister in Baltimore when she disappeared on December 18th.
Every morning I cry, every evening I cry. I have not slept. My whole family from Atlanta to New York to in Baltimore, everyone that knows me has not slept.
Phylicia's family says she's a straight-A high school student on her way to graduating a year early and already applying for college. Her family and law enforcement officials are frustrated at the lack of leads in the investigation. 2 congressmen issued a joint statement asking the public for help. A billboard has been posted along a local highway with Phylicia's photos, and a $10,000 reward has been established for information on the teen's whereabouts. Phylicia's father says he believes his daughter is alive somewhere in Baltimore. Baltimore police say the missing teen could have been abducted.
There's no smoking gun. There are people of interest. But there's no one person that is of more interest than the others at this point.
Outwardly, Michael Johnson was fully cooperative with the intense police questioning. He said he visited the apartment briefly midday to pick up personal items while moving out after his recent split from Deena. Michael claimed Phylicia said she was going to get food and he had no reason to think anything was wrong. Yet, certain actions raised suspicion in detectives' minds. Social media posts and call records indicated 500 texts were exchanged between Michael and Phylicia during her visit. If there was no inappropriate relationship, why the excessive communication? Police also doubted Michael's reason for being at the apartment that day. Security footage didn't show him moving any items out, despite his claim he was picking up his belongings post-breakup. It seemed possible Michael, a 28-year-old man, had developed an unhealthy attachment to 16-year-old Phylicia during her trip. Perhaps when he was alone with her on the 28th, things turned violent after she rebuffed his advances. But without hard evidence, Michael couldn't be named an official suspect. In the weeks following Phylicia's disappearance, few promising leads emerged. Some worried the teenager had been kidnapped and transported across state lines. But as days turned to weeks with no breaks, fears mounted that Phylicia was gone for good. 4 agonizing months passed before answers finally surfaced, and they were far more heartbreaking than Phylicia's loved ones imagined. On April 20th, 2011, a gruesome discovery was made nearly 50 miles outside Baltimore. A Pennsylvania man spotted something abnormal floating near the Conowingo Dam in Maryland's Susquehanna River. He called the police, who brought in divers to investigate. In the water, search teams recovered the badly decomposed remains of a young female body. It would take weeks for examiners to officially confirm the identity through dental records. But inside, Phylicia's family already knew. Their deepest fears had been tragically realized.
She disappeared December 28th, and many intensive searches turned up nothing. But now the body of 16-year-old Phylicia Barnes has been found. We have been following this breaking news all afternoon. Barnes' body was one of 2 pulled from the Susquehanna River yesterday. The other body is that of a man, and tonight police believe the 2 may be linked. We have live team coverage beginning with I-Team lead investigative reporter Jane Miller at State Police headquarters in Pikesville. Jane.
Donna, police first suspected the body that was pulled from the river yesterday might be that of Phylicia Barnes because of a distinctive tattoo. Then this afternoon, Dental records confirmed it. The body of the teenager was pulled yesterday from the Susquehanna River near the Conowingo Dam. Also recovered from the water was the body of a young male south of the dam. He has yet to be identified. As we reported earlier, investigators initially suspected the female's body might be that of Barnes because of a distinctive tattoo, a rose on the lower part of one of her legs. Sources tell us Barnes' body and the body of the male were unclothed. No identification was present on either of them. Today answers one question, the most important. After all these months, Phylicia Barnes has been found. But how did she die? Who's responsible? And how did she end up in the river? The area north of the Conowingo Dam is not an area that's all that easy to reach. Now, police and investigators do believe that the two bodies are linked because they really have no reason to believe otherwise. Sources tell us the conditions of the bodies were very similar, and as I said, both had no clothes on, neither had any identification. We are still waiting for cause and manner of death in this case, as well as the identification of the young male. There is a briefing tonight here at State Police Headquarters by both Maryland State Police and Baltimore City Police. This is a criminal investigation. Reporting live tonight from Pikesville, I'm Jane Miller, WBAL TV 11 News.
All right, thank you, Jane. Of course, the search for Phylicia Barnes has been intense and sustained. Baltimore City Police teamed up with federal agents. The Guardian Angels offered assistance, and digital billboards soliciting tips were set up along major highways. I-Team investigative reporter David Collins is live in the studio with the details on the efforts and the time that it took to find her. David.
Donna, she vanished without a trace December 28th. The Baltimore City Police efforts to find her grew in earnest January 2nd. At the time of her disappearance, authorities considered it one of the strangest and most vexing missing persons cases they ever investigated.
Days after family members reported Phylicia Barnes missing, Baltimore City Police and federal agents began an intensive and sustained search for the high school honor student from Monroe, North Carolina. She disappeared December 28th, 2010, visiting her sisters in Baltimore.
Okay, everyone, what we're going to do is we're going to do an area canvass in the area of the Reisterstown Square apartments.
Detectives went door to door with her photo, asking questions, looking for shreds of evidence that could turn into a lead. But she had vanished without a trace. No cell phone calls, no use of her credit cards, no updates on her Facebook page. Her half-sister Kelly Barnes says Phylicia last posted at 11:30 a.m. and mentioned being hungry. Kelly writes, "The day Phylicia went missing, she texted me while I was at work and asked me to come pick her up. I started calling her, texting her, leaving her voicemails, everything and nothing."
My family's not eating. My family's not even right focused, but on this situation.
That's the only thing that's been helping me through this, is taking Valiums to calm my nerves down.
After family pleas and the ongoing police investigation still hadn't turned up leads, digital billboards were put up on major highways, including I-95, soliciting tips.
A spokesman for the Baltimore Police Department.
City police considered it one of the strangest and most vexing missing persons cases they ever investigated, yet it failed to generate much national attention, something her family found very disappointing. Friends and classmates at Union Academy prayed for her return.
We all have faith that you're going to bring her home real soon, Lord.
Union Academy offered a $25,000 reward for information. As her friends posted tributes on YouTube, a $10,000 reward was being offered in Baltimore. The Guardian Angels provided their assistance in looking for Phylicia. That search ended around 7:30 a.m. Wednesday. According to police, crews working on the Conowingo Dam spotted a body in the river. Natural Resources Police recovered the body of a female from the water.
Reached by phone, Phylicia's mother says she's been in mourning since the day her daughter disappeared, and she's grateful for all the efforts made to find her. Phylicia was a track star and honor student. She planned to graduate early and attend Towson University.
The nude body was positively identified as belonging to Phylicia Barnes. The medical examiner concluded Phylicia died of asphyxiation, meaning she had been intentionally strangled or smothered by someone. All hope that Phylicia may have run away or accidentally drowned was erased. This was clearly an intentional murder. For investigators, a new mission began, bringing the 16-year-old's killer to justice. Their focus returned to Deena's apartment, which had to be the initial crime scene. Finding DNA traces or other evidence to identify a suspect would be crucial. But the physical case proved challenging. With so many weeks having passed, any DNA or fibers left behind were likely contaminated or destroyed. Prosecutors could theorize what happened, but without hard proof, no charges could be brought. The investigation hit its first major breakthrough over a year later, thanks to a critical witness coming forward. James McCrae claimed he personally observed Phylicia Barnes' lifeless body inside her sister's apartment back on December 28th, the day she first disappeared. McCrae said Michael Johnson confessed to him that he had strangled Phylicia after making unwanted sexual advances. Michael supposedly admitted he improperly touched the 16-year-old, then used a pillow to suffocate her when she resisted. According to McCrae, Michael asked for help removing Phylicia's body from the premises. Based on this bombshell eyewitness account, police finally felt confident enough to arrest Michael Johnson for Phylicia's murder. On April 26, 2012, exactly 16 months after Phylicia first vanished, officers arrested Michael Johnson outside his home. Detectives were sure he had killed her inside the apartment, then used a plastic storage container to secretly move her body out of the building before disposing of it in the river.
The last person believed to have seen missing North Carolina teen Phylicia Barnes alive is now charged with her murder. And that's our top story tonight at 6. At this hour, Michael Johnson is in jail without bail. Police arrested him outside his Baltimore home last night.
And there's brewing controversy surrounding this case after the city's lead detective was suspended in an unrelated incident involving his own daughter. My team is providing team coverage on this tonight. Lead investigative reporter Jane Miller is in our newsroom with the latest on the controversy surrounding the police detective. But we're going to begin with 11 News reporter David Collins live at police headquarters. David.
Well, Donna, prosecutors declined to disclose the cause of death or any evidence for that matter associated with this case. But sources tell 11 News that Phylicia was asphyxiated and that Michael Johnson was seen carrying a large rubber-based container to his car around the time of her disappearance. The man arrested and indicted in connection with the death of Phylicia Barnes is longtime family friend Michael Johnson. He's the former boyfriend of Phylicia's older sister, Deena. Baltimore City State's Attorney Greg Bernstein suggested she was murdered in Baltimore, but provided few other details about the case.
We believe that we've got the right guy.
The Barnes case attracted national attention. Back in December 2010, the 16-year-old honor student from North Carolina spent the holidays with family members in Baltimore. She mysteriously disappeared December 28th. A year later, Phylicia's body was found floating in the Susquehanna River near the Conowingo Dam. The state's attorney declined to discuss the cause of death or what type of evidence they have to support the indictment. But according to a source, the cause of death is asphyxiation. The source also says Johnson was seen taking a large rubber-based container to his car around the time she was reported missing. Reached by phone, Phylicia's father Russell said the family is rejoicing over the news of the arrest. Barnes' uncle, Harry Watson, thanked God for this day. Relatives suspected Johnson from the beginning. They knew him well. He went on family vacations with them.
I would hope that he would do the right thing. If it was him, tell the truth. Tell the truth and give Phylicia's family some type of closure.
Phylicia's brother Brian wears her picture around his neck. He says a stranger gave it to his mom the first week she disappeared.
There's little stuff just to keep her in our memory, so I wear this every day and it never comes off.
Meanwhile, Johnson remains locked up in central booking. The indictment which led to his arrest is sealed. According to Johnson's attorney, Russell Neverdun, he suffered a laceration under his eye and bruises about his face when police took him into custody. Neverdun believes prosecutors rushed to judgment. He cites the suspension earlier this week of the lead detective in the Barnes killing in an unrelated incident. He says prosecutors were afraid of losing credibility in the case, and they arrested Johnson before the case fell apart.
I think that at best what they had was a circumstantial case.
Again, that question of credibility stems from the suspension this week of the head detective. Lead investigative reporter Jane Miller has that story live from the newsroom.
A neighbor reported seeing Michael struggle to carry a large 35-gallon plastic tub outside and into a vehicle on the very day Phylicia disappeared. Its dimensions matched up with the container McCrae said was used. Presented with an apparent confession, prosecutors hoped they finally had enough evidence to bring Michael to justice. But getting a conviction would prove extraordinarily difficult. Michael denied every accusation and dismissed McCrae as a liar. His defense team was confident that without DNA evidence, surveillance footage, or fingerprints directly linking him to Phylicia's death, he could not be found guilty. The first trial did not commence until January 2013, over 2 years after Phylicia initially disappeared from Baltimore. James McCrae delivered compelling testimony, describing how Michael callously confessed to murdering Phylicia and requested help hiding her body. Additional witnesses said they observed Michael struggling to move a heavy plastic tub out of Deena's apartment on the day in question. But without forensic evidence, the defense maintained there was still reasonable doubt. Michael avoided even looking at Phylicia's family as the jury went into deliberations. In the end, the circumstantial testimony was enough to sway the jury. After 2 days, they returned with a guilty verdict on the charge of second-degree murder. At long last, Phylicia's loved ones felt some justice had been served. But their closure was brutally ripped away 10 days later. Local police revealed prosecutors that James McCrae, the critical eyewitness who claimed Michael confessed, was unreliable with a long history of fabricated claims.
Story at 5, a stunning decision in a high-profile murder case. A Baltimore judge today ordered a new trial for the man convicted of killing 16-year-old Phylicia Barnes.
Yeah, the decision came just 6 weeks after Michael Johnson was found guilty of murder. 11 News I-Team lead investigative reporter Jane Miller is live tonight at Courthouse East. And Jane, what happened?
Well, Stan, there was an audible gasp in the packed courtroom when Judge Alfred Nance announced his decision just after lunch, or just after 12 o'clock this afternoon after hearing arguments all morning. It is something that almost never happens, but it did today, dealing prosecutors a huge blow in a high-profile case. The father of Phylicia Barnes left court today clearly disappointed.
Let's do it again. The state reassured me that we're going to retry Michael Maurice Johnson for murdering Phylicia. It's a setback, but my spirit is still great. My family's spirit is still great, so we're going to keep it moving.
Baltimore Judge Alfred Nance ruled Michael Johnson deserves a new trial because he found the prosecutors withheld critical information about the state's key witness in the Phylicia Barnes murder case, inmate James McCrae.
I think it was pretty obvious that the state got caught with their hand in the cookie jar.
McCrae testified Johnson called him the day Phylicia died, showed him her body, and said he killed her to keep her quiet after having sex. He was the only witness to so directly pin Johnson with the crime. But the judge agreed with Johnson's lawyers that prosecutors failed to disclose the full story about McCrae's criminal record. They turned over a handwritten summary of his record, not the typical rap sheet, including the fact McCrae had been in custody in Baltimore County. That's important because it may have allowed McCrae to know key details about the crime through the media. Prosecutors told jurors there's no way he would have had access.
When you do the background understanding, you find out his entire background, his entire history. He writes letters to the police based on cases that appear to be in the media, and therefore he offers testimony.
The judge ruled prosecutors, quote, severely violated the rules. No defendant, he said, is guaranteed a perfect trial. A defendant is guaranteed a fair trial. George, can we talk to you? Could you get State's Attorney? Yep. Deputy State's Attorney George Hazel was in the courtroom when the new trial was ordered. He declined to stop for questions. State's Attorney Greg Bernstein declined requests to speak with the media. He issued a written statement saying he was disappointed. The new trial date in this case is set for May 28th. The charge of first-degree murder no longer applies in this case. That's because of double jeopardy. Michael Johnson was already tried and found not guilty of that count.
As a result, Michael was granted a retrial. For the North Carolina teen's family, it was a crushing blow. Prosecutors insisted Michael was still guilty, but without McCrae had lost their strongest piece of evidence. Building another case felt daunting. Meanwhile, Michael remained free on bail for months until the second trial could commence. That retrial finally began in June of 2014. The state introduced fresh evidence, a video showing Phylicia, Michael, Deena, and others naked and intoxicated.
More from the defense team for the man charged with killing Phylicia Barnes. They've learned that he is in a sex tape with the victim and her older sister. Cheryl Connor spent time talking with 3 attorneys tonight and joins us with more on the case and a really bizarre twist here.
Yeah, Rosie, and the defense team tells me they knew about the tape, but they were holding off on using it to protect the reputation of Phylicia Barnes and her family. Now they have no choice but to defend their client, Michael Johnson, and that, they say, will help their case. A team of defense attorneys is now coming up with a plan on how a sex tape involving their client will play into the trial. 28-year-old Michael Johnson is charged with killing Phylicia Barnes, a North Carolina teen visiting her family in Baltimore for Christmas 2 years ago.
What's disturbing about this is that one of the people happened to be a sister, an older sister, an adult, who's engaged in sexual conduct while her sister is engaged in sexual conduct. And it's not with Mr. Johnson. It's with another person.
The defense team watched the recording, which we're told was stored on Deena Barnes' cell phone, and says Phylicia was engaged in sex acts with Johnson's younger brother. Deena Barnes, her older half-sister, was with Johnson. Sometime later, the medical examiner says Barnes died from asphyxiation, but
there's no choking, there's no roughhousing, no horseplay, anything of that nature that's physical or aggressive in any means, anything that's masochistic, how you would look at it, nothing of that nature.
The defense has to respond to the state's request to close the courtroom for over 16 minutes while the tape is played, but open it back to the public while Deena Barnes is on the stand. Prosecutors don't typically speak before a trial, so we don't know why they believe a sex tape with minors is worth playing in court.
I think this exposure, this sex tape at this late in time on their 2-year anniversary of this girl's disappearance is appalling. It is basically about character assassination.
Phylicia Barnes went missing 2 years ago today. 4 months later, her remains were found in the Susquehanna River near the Conowingo Dam. Her death was ruled a homicide days later, but it took another year to make an arrest. The defense won't tell us all of their attacks, but one is a witness who claims he saw Phylicia alive in Cecil County.
The state's contention is that this murder happened in Baltimore City. Otherwise, if the state believed that she was murdered in Cecil County, then this case would be in Cecil County.
The defense claims it shows Johnson and Barnes are friendly, which is quite different from what was painted at Johnson's bail review. That was back in April. It also brings into question if anyone will be charged with possessing child pornography. The age of consent is 16 in Maryland, but the age to tape a sex act is 18. Right now, we don't know if Deena Barnes or anyone else will be charged. To close the courtroom for the viewing of the videotape, that will have to be worked out before the trial date. The defense believes its client has the right to keep it open.
Prosecutors described it as illustrating the inappropriate nature of Michael's relationship with the teen. Additional witnesses again placed Michael struggling to move a large plastic tub on the day in question. But the defense countered the lack of forensics proving Phylicia was ever inside. And this time, the jury could not agree unanimously on a verdict. After 2 weeks, the judge declared a mistrial, citing the hopelessly deadlocked jury. Prosecutors were forced to start over again from scratch.
The second trial for the man accused of killing Phylicia Barnes ended in a mistrial. Michael Johnson is accused of killing Barnes, a teenager from North Carolina who was visiting her family in Baltimore. And the ruling today gave evidence that was submitted to jurors, even though both the prosecution and the defense agreed it would not reach the jury. The judge determined this was an accident, and both sides will return to court on Wednesday to select a brand new trial date. Johnson was previously convicted of killing Barnes, but at sentencing, the judge threw out that conviction and ordered a second trial. The judge cited issues with one of the prosecution's key witnesses.
But they were unwilling to give up, insisting Michael would not get away with murdering an innocent 16-year-old. Yet a third trial, which kicked off nearly 3 years after Phylicia's death in December 2016, ended the same way. Prosecutors utilized phone records and texts between Michael and Phylicia to imply an inappropriate attachment. But the judge eventually acquitted Michael on all charges, feeling the circumstantial evidence remained insufficient.
After 7 years of questions, a one-time suspect is acquitted in the murder case of Phylicia Barnes. This was the third attempt to convict Michael Johnson for the 16-year-old's murder. The North Carolina honors student vanished in Baltimore in 2010. Her body found months later. WJZ is live. Joy Burnett tells us the judge was not convinced there was enough evidence to convict Johnson. Joy.
Well, this case had been going back and forth for 7 years. Michael Johnson was even convicted of murder. But after today's acquittal, he's now a free man. Michael Johnson said nothing as he walked out of court and then drove off. A judge acquitted Johnson in the Phylicia Barnes murder trial. The 16-year-old disappeared in 2010 while on break in Baltimore from North Carolina. Barnes' half-sister once dated Johnson, and he'd long been a suspect. But on Friday, the judge said there wasn't enough evidence to convict the 34-year-old. One of his attorneys cried after the ruling.
We grieve for the Barnes family and this tragedy, but convicting an innocent man is not justice for Phylicia Barnes. We are grateful that this 7-year nightmare is over for Mr. Johnson and his family.
This is the third time he went on trial for her murder. The first conviction was overturned, then came a mistrial, and now an acquittal. Phylicia Barnes' father was present in the early stages of the 4-week trial, but not on Friday.
Do you feel the evidence is strong enough? Are you still confident?
Always confident. Always confident. Always confident.
State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby said she spoke with the family after the judge acquitted Johnson.
I am extremely disappointed by today's decision, but the judicial process has played out, and we have no choice but to follow that decision and to respect that decision.
State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby also said they believe they were pursuing the person who actually killed Phylicia Barnes, but she said they also have to respect the judge's ruling. Reporting live tonight, Joy Burnett for WJZ.
After half a decade battling the justice system, Michael Johnson finally escaped all accountability for Phylicia Barnes' murder. The promising teenager's loved ones were left in agonizing limbo, still searching for definitive answers about why Phylicia was so cruelly taken from them. In the decades since Phylicia Barnes first disappeared from Baltimore, her tragic murder remains officially unsolved. While many maintain Michael Johnson likely played a role, police have been unable to gather the conclusive evidence needed to prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. While the circumstances around Phylicia's death are still shrouded in mystery, her spirit lives on through the people she impacted and through efforts made in her memory to protect other young people. Following Phylicia's murder, her case became a symbol for the rising issue of missing minority children cases being overlooked. Phylicia's family strongly advocated for new legislation requiring police to more thoroughly investigate missing young people of color. In 2012, Maryland passed a law called Phylicia's Law, requiring improved coordination between agencies and information sharing in order to help locate missing children faster. It was an early victory in the fight to make sure all missing kids, regardless of background, are treated with urgency. The Barnes family also started the Phylicia Barnes Foundation to connect loved ones of missing persons and provide counseling support. While Phylicia never got to realize her own dreams, her memory is still helping people today. Phylicia Barnes continues to be remembered for her kind heart, her academic talents, her passions for dance and psychology, and her loving nature. She is still missed dearly by all those whose lives she touched. For the tight-knit community in Monroe, North Carolina, Phylicia is still one of their own, a beautiful soul gone far too soon. Though her murder remains unsolved, her legacy and spirit live on in the people Phylicia inspired and the changes made in her name.